So let's head to Abuja. We've got a panel of analysts there. We've got Bamal Abi, a legal practitioner. We also do have Dr. Sulaiman Barnabas, who is a lecturer for Bayes University. They join us from our studios in Abuja. Thank you for joining us this morning. Let's straight away get your impressions of, well, yes, the process. Now a winner has been declared. Mr. Labi, could you, let's start from you. How did you see the entire process leading up to the early hours of today?
Well, very much like most Nigerians, we were all anxious. It took a little while, and we could see the hiccups because it was basically a live process. But at the end of the day, I think the result is something that, to an extent, was expected. And largely, the process was fine. There are lessons to be learned, no question about it. For me, really, the fact that in total, we had just over 1/3 of accredited voters actually going forward to cast their vote is cause for concern and something that we must look at going forward. What is the cause of this voter apathy? How is it that less than 30 million Nigerians decide the fate of 200 million Nigerians? How is it that over nearly 80 million Nigerians were registered to vote and just about 1/3 came out to vote? Those are the questions that we need to look at seriously and ensure that going forward we have at least 50% of the registered and accredited voters coming out to vote. That's really important.
Dr. Barnabas, what do you think?
Yes, I would like to say that we should congratulate Nigerians. I particularly congratulate Nigerians for the successful conclusion of the presidential elections. Of course, like my colleague here has rightly said, there are lessons to be learned. There are areas that need serious improvement. However, in all, we're all happy that the elections have come and gone. And those who hoped that the country was going to burn, I'm sure once again are disappointed. And this shows the Nigerian spirit that irrespective of whatever agitations precede elections, each time the elections are concluded, we always have a way of overcoming the anxieties and all that came with them. So I think that Nigerians should be congratulated, and the lessons that have been learned, the gray areas that need to be looked into, some of the lessons that we can take from these elections.
Dr. Barnabas, I'm just wondering what stands out for you in terms of the high points and, if you will, also the low points in the process that brought us to this point for the elections. Do you, for instance, see that issues where complaints were lodged to INEC, and INEC has promised that it will have an audit report out? What should be the next point?
Well, the high point for me in this election is the fact that it has been concluded and a winner has emerged. We are done with this. We know that the next presidential election we'll be holding, by the grace of God, will be in 2023. The low point is the fact that people who were willing, who went out hoping that they were going to participate in the process, for whatever reason, were denied of their rights to vote for the president of their choice. And I don't want to really blame INEC alone. I mean, that comes to the problem of institutions. There are institutional failures, and so the low point is the fact that institutions must wake up to do the right thing. The security agencies, the political parties especially, must learn serious lessons and be willing and be ready to drop their manipulative tendencies because they always want to win elections at all means. The Machiavellian spirit, remains with our political parties and other political thespians in our democratic environment. And so if we're ever going to overcome these low points in our democratic history, I mean, it has always been there. It's for institutions to wake up and do the right thing. They should perform their roles and functions and always be willing to lose the same way they will be willing to, hoping to win elections. And these are the things that we can encourage the political parties, other democratic institutions to work at. But, like I said, we have had a successful presidential election in that the votes were cast. Of course, those who were denied their right to vote, whatever the political parties will do about that, that will happen at the courts. But on a general note, I think that Nigeria's democracy is progressing. 20 years of unbroken democratic experience is something that Nigerians should celebrate.
Madam Alabi, you on that election day, you sat here with us here in Lagos, and if I do recall very clearly, you shared your experience just coming to our Lagos headquarters here, and you made some observation, and one of which is that the voters were out there in their numbers, but you couldn't see the INEC officials in time. What lessons, if you will give an advice, what lessons moving forward, especially looking towards the bigger ball in 2023, should INEC take away, especially when it has to do with its logistics?
Well, clearly, from what I saw, and as you rightly said, it was a small part of the bigger picture. Nonetheless, out of, I think it was 5 or 6 polling stations, only one had INEC officials just arriving at the time. So the logistics preparation left a lot to be desired. Thankfully, they eventually got there. Most people got to vote. I went past those polling stations again on my return from the studio, and they were voting, and they carried on until the last voter got a chance to cast their vote. So to that extent, yes, they started late, but they finished fairly strong. I think what is really important, because this emphasis on, and overemphasis, in my view, on the presidential election clearly shows that perhaps voters or citizens don't really understand where governance is most important to them as citizens. What do we want out of government? We want good schools, we want good local roads, we want hospitals, we want clean water. That's at the level of your local government and perhaps state before you get to federal. But we all seem to think, oh, once we've got a president, that's it. We need to focus more on local government. Do you know who your local government councillors are? Who are those running for that office? They get a huge chunk of our budget. And that money is meant to provide schools for us, hospitals for us, deal with our little roads that we drive through or drive past every day. We need to focus more on those people. Who are they? Holding them accountable. Then we'll truly feel the effect of governance, and they in turn will hold the center accountable. So there's a lot of voter education to be done by INEC, by civil society, by all of us who are engaged and who are concerned and stakeholders in this democracy. But I do agree with my colleague that 20 years unbroken democracy is a good thing for Nigeria, knowing our checkered past. We thank God for it. We know that we're progressing, and it can only get better, in my view. We learn lessons from this. 2023 will be better, and even better the next year round.
Yeah, Mrs. Alabi, you remember that tension was very high in the build-up to this election, accusations and counter-accusations from various interest groups all over the place. Looking back now, was all that necessary?
Totally unnecessary. And sadly, one of the characteristics of this jurisdiction, and I have the advantage of having observed elections in another jurisdiction, having lived and worked with colleagues and people in other jurisdictions. Nigeria, we have a tendency to hyperbole. We have a tendency to, exaggerate and really use words in a way that's disrespectful of each other and inappropriate. I mean, this is a place where I've been in court and a colleague has stood up and called me a liar in the courtroom. Of course, I had to hold him to account. But I have been in court elsewhere, and such language would never have come in the engagement between lawyers in a courtroom, because it's just unethical conduct, and it's not in line with our etiquette. Similarly, the politicians are disrespectful of each other. They're disrespectful of us, the citizens, in the sorts of fake news and stories they send around flying and expect that we'll just swallow it hook, line, and sinker. So we really need to be careful and take a step back and look at the words we use, how we communicate with each other, and really communicate with each other with more respect. I was reading in the social media, for instance, observers have released election results. I mean, that is just fake news, to put it nicely, and malicious, if you want to be, look at perhaps what direction that's coming from. I headed an observer mission of lawyers from 14 countries of Southern Africa. I know what observers do. Observers are like judges. They do not jump into the arena. They simply observe, take notes, and then share that information. It certainly is not their place to release election results. Certainly not. I mean, the mere suggestion is ludicrous. So these are some of the things that we must, be a bit more temperate in our engagement, in our conversation, in the way we communicate and the things we communicate to each other.